And now, your host, Couch Tomato!
Hey, I'm Couch Tomato and I'm joined by
Hulk.
Welcome to Stuff for Movie Buffs, and today we're talking
Black Panther.
All right, before we get into that, I want to thank all the Patreon supporters. Huge thanks. I did mention last week that I was going to start a private chat, and actually for the people who have supported us up to this point, really appreciate it. You're actually invited to that private group me, so we could discuss topics that we don't necessarily get to discuss in the comment section, like Black Panther. So if you are a Patreon member, just sign up for the group me app if you haven't already. Go ahead and send me either the phone number attached to it or the email address attached to it. Try to attach your email so that way I could actually just add you into the group me chat, and we could just discuss this topic as well as trailers, etc. If you aren't a Patreon supporter, feel free to head over. $3 a month, which is less than like a movie ticket, helps support the podcast, the channel, and everything that we're doing. But it also gives you that connection to us where we get to stay connected throughout the week. So thanks there. And moving along. So Black Panther was released this week. What a way to cap off Black History Month. And I'm pretty sure that was intentional with the release date and everything that they did with that. So let's jump right into it and discuss this movie. So Hope, I was hype over this movie, but the surprising thing was a lot of my friends were hype. And the reason that I say that's a surprise is I have a few friends I could talk to about movies. I have a couple of frat brothers. We have a group me, listserv where we just discuss movie topics and things like that. I also have Hulk, and that's about it. Like a lot of my friends, we tend to talk about sports more, or just different topics, entertainment when it comes to TV. But movies like this, I don't necessarily have a lot of friends that are in tune with the nerd culture. So Marvel movies and DC movies, sometimes I'm on an island by myself. That's why I enjoy doing the podcast like this. But a majority of Hulk in my circle are African American, people from the Caribbean. So we have a lot of folks in the islands, from the islands. A lot of people from, you have your our urban circle, and me and you share some of the same, pool of friends. So we don't get to talk about Marvel movies a lot. But when I noticed that those friends who don't care anything about the MCU were anticipating this movie, I started to think this movie could do something special at the box office. And the box office numbers are in. We're recording this Monday morning. Scheduling conflicts prevented us from recording this weekend. But the box office numbers are in for Thursday through Sunday. And what are those numbers looking like, Hope?
As of right now, it's at 192.
Which makes it the
5th best of all time.
Perfect. And then when you look at what it's going to do for the President's Day weekend, what are those numbers looking like?
218.
Man, that is amazing. Because this isn't an ensemble picture. The only Marvel movie that is made this much money. It's right ahead of Avengers: Age of Ultron, which it was an ensemble film. It had your Captain America's, Iron Man's, and people from different parts of the universe. You also have Avengers from 2012 that did more than it, which was a groundbreaking film. So yeah, to have this movie, this is like Ant-Man doing this much movie.
Yeah, exactly.
To give you some insight, Doctor Strange did 75 opening weekend. So this is crazy.
Which was really good. You know what I'm saying? For Doctor Strange.
That was great.
That was great.
You know what I mean? So that's amazing. So kudos to these guys. So all right, so the money's in the bag, but big question, is this movie any good?
Oh yeah, it's really good. Like they really delivered it. Coogler, in my opinion, is 3 for 3. With Creed, Fruitvale Station, and now this, like, really delivered something special. The cast was phenomenal. Just everything about it. Like I really love this movie. It's definitely something that I really enjoyed, and it's one of the best. It's a very young year. I mean, this year just started, but it's definitely the best movie I've seen so far this year.
Yeah, and you mentioned Ryan, the director, and for me, I always marvel at looking at prodigies.
Yeah.
And by definition, he's a prodigy. Like this he's either my age or like a couple months younger.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you see young people like that, you know, kind of like steering the ship.
Yeah.
That's what you call a prodigy. Somebody who's basically realized their purpose at a young age. So I don't need to see any more movies to understand that this guy has a big future.
Oh yeah.
I already said it after Creed. I low-key like Creed better than this movie. But
Same here.
It's
Same
like
here.
yeah, so it's like I saw that, I'm like, wow, dude is on point. Like it's foolish for me to put him into my top 10 because he's so young and he hasn't really done anything yet. But honestly, some of the people in my top 5, I'm basing that off of like 2 or 3 movies. Yeah. So I'm like, for me, my numbers change around all the time. But for me, it's you got Quentin.
Mm-hmm.
And I just appreciate the fact that he could write his material and make his vision come to life by directing it as well. And he didn't go to film school. Like, so it just shows me now when you're gifted in something, you don't necessarily need, you could polish your technique in different ways other than schooling.
Yeah.
And I like Edgar Wright, you know, so I just feel like he's underappreciated as well. Man, you know, like after that, it's wide open. So I'm kind of sneaking this dude into my top 5, bro. So just off of this and Creed, you know, and Fruitvale Station and his age, I'm like, no, you know what? It's enough. I've already been circling you on my calendar. So now I'm just going to be more vocal about it. So what do I like about this movie? And I'm one more thing. I'm so glad we didn't record this podcast right after, because I loved the movie after leaving theaters, but I loved it more as the days went by. So let's go ahead and talk about things that we liked, but let's be objective and talk about things that we didn't. So let's start off with saying a couple of things nice. We could just start listing the points. It doesn't have to be in any kind of order. So I'll let you start it off.
Okay, first thing I have to mention is Michael B. Jordan. Like, to me, he did.
I'm gonna cut you out there only because I got a section for villain. So you could talk about him, but just try to save some of your best steam for the villain section.
All right, I just had to mention him. The cast overall as well. Outside of him, you know, Okoye, played by Michonne from Walking Dead. Those who watch Walking Dead, I was really happy to see her finally get on the big screen. Who else? A new guy, Winston Duke, who played M'Baku. I thought he was real fun. He provided like a lot of comic relief as well with that. And then overall,
he became a fan favorite. By the way.
Yeah. Like, it's just,
I didn't think they gave him enough. Like I liked him, but I didn't think like they using him as a sex symbol on these memes.
Like,
and I'm like
these ladies going crazy. I'm like, damn.
I'm like, whoa. I guess I didn't look at the movie like that, but he's like the fan. He stole the show apparently, and I'm like, that's the one, yeah. Okay, I guess, but they love him.
It's like every girl on my timeline just kept posting like, "Who is this guy? Blah blah blah. Is he married? This and that." I'm like, chill. Like,
whoa. I'm like, bruh, he's obviously gonna get a bigger role in an upcoming film.
Oh yeah.
If he doesn't,
he's definitely penciled in for the sequel. But yeah.
And one more thing, because the names that you mentioned in the standout characters, it's a lot of diversity coming out your mouth, and obviously, it's easy to notice in a film like this because there is so much diversity. So, I honestly think, remember, when I used to be in management, the one thing that whenever, you get graded on diversity targets sometimes. And a trick that I used to use is the best way to fix diversity targets is to hire diverse decision makers. Because it's like, if I recruit Hulk, and I allow Hulk to be able to recruit, hey, Hulk, do you have anybody in mind for this open position? Hulk's naturally going to, pick people that's in his circle. So sometimes when you allow decision makers in power that are diverse, like what they did with the Wonder Woman director, and I think they should follow suit and do that with the Black Widow standalone picture, female director. And that's going to fix some of, your if every studio could start doing that, like they did with Ryan, you have a black director. He basically hired diversity in the casting department, in the costume department, in the music department. Like when you look at the team that he bought, like one of the stipulations of him directing the film was, hey man, I got to bring on my own team. I need my own set designer. I need my, the same music, guys that I worked with on Creed. I need the costume designer that I've used in the past. And he fixed their diversity problems in like seconds. And it wasn't in your face, because a lot of people didn't like Spider-Man Homecoming because it felt like it rubbed your nose in it, and it rubs some fans the wrong way. But with this movie, correct me if I'm wrong, this movie only takes place in Wakanda, Tokyo, and Oakland. So it's like, and if you visit those places, if you ever get a chance to visit any of those locations, good luck on finding Wakanda on a map though. I'm sure you'll notice that people on the screen match the actual people from those areas.
Yeah. And it's like you mentioned as well, like authenticity. I think Hollywood has a major problem where, like you said, okay, like for instance, I remember recently they had like the Pocahontas movie, like that they're trying to do, and then instead of hiring, people, real from that culture or from similar backgrounds, they'll just get a white person.
Is Christopher Nolan available? Or
yeah,
he knows about.
Yeah, it's like
it seems like he'll be great for the part.
Yeah, it's like they and that's so disrespectful to the actual culture when there's actually talent there. Like it's not that hard. There's actually talent in these countries, and it's like I'm so happy with Black Panther that they actually went out, to a lot of these different sections of, because Hollywood is not just Hollywood. There's other areas like where California doesn't have the sole, power as far as like talent. There's actually talent across the world. So if you
sometimes you don't even have to go across the world, just go across the bay. Like Ryan was, Ryan Coogler was in Oakland, California. And that's like, I mean, the hood has always been kind of neglected when it's like the redheaded stepchild. When you look at California, I'm like, sometimes you just have to make a habit of leaving that box or bubble that you live in. And this film, because of the money that it brought in, a lot of other studios are going to try to replicate that.
Oh yeah.
And it's not as difficult as you think. It's not like catching lightning in a bottle. It's just about hiring the right people for the job and dismissing, color, and stuff like that.
And the thing is, do it the right way also. Like you said, don't pander to it, a certain audience, like i.e. Ghostbusters, you know what I'm saying? Like don't force it, but just do it naturally. Like you said, find the right talent, have them be part of the decision-making process and actually deliver a good movie, and you will, like, period. Like, if you actually take the time out.
Oh, did you get that alert? Did you hear that? I'm sorry, my phone just went off. Hold on. It just coming in. I just got an alert from Warner Brothers. Apparently, DC has now decided to film the upcoming standalone Cyborg picture.
Oh yeah, that's coming.
In Africa.
Exactly.
That's when you start messing. Just when you start messing up the formula.
Yeah.
Like, I think movies are gonna purposely try to go to Africa, thinking that was the secret to this movie's success. And I'm like, no, man, you missed the point. But I'm sorry. What else were some things that you liked about this film?
Nah, I think it was just like you said, like just the authenticity and like how the themes. Okay, thematically, it was able to stay consistent, and some of the themes they touched on were just so true and scary at the same time, because it's just like, whoa, like I don't want to jump ahead, but at the same time, because there's something with the villain I want to mention, so I won't jump too ahead. I'll expound on that later, but a lot of the themes really made sense. And I was just thinking, like, wow, like this is, you know what I'm saying? Like, this comic book movie is getting real deep to me, and I really love that.
Thank you for not jumping ahead. I will say, to sum it up, I agree with you. The lessons in this movie are some of the most impactful lessons in the MCU to date. So that's what I'll say, and then we'll move on to things that we didn't like. And I'm trying to be as objective as I can, but the things that I didn't like, when I researched why they put those in the film, I'm actually okay with it, but I'll list them anyway. So the fight scenes, and to be fair, the Russo brothers and Joss Whedon are the only ones that have gotten action right in the MCU so far. If you look back at the MCU films and you're not including those directors that I just named, the fight scenes are kind of trash. It's like, it's like CGI on CGI.
That's true.
But when it comes to hand-to-hand combat, I'm like, "Ew, it's not, ew." It's not that good. So this film, the fight scenes are pretty slower than what we're used to. And in an interview, the director said he mimicked fighting techniques from Africa. So he gets cool points from that, from me at least, because the fighting seems more realistic than we're used to in an MCU movie. However, when you omit the hand-to-hand combat outside of the suit, when they're actually dressed in the suit, it looked like some 1999 to 2005-ish type action sequences that, like a lot of people are comparing it to Spider-Man. I would agree. I'm like, okay, this part isn't really, this is going to be a huge blemish. And I don't know how they let that slide in. So that might be his weakness right there. Is like the CGI stuff, but ultimately it's the team that he had behind him. I'm just surprised that Marvel didn't step in and say, I know you want to use your own people, but we've done this for a couple of movies so far. Let us pair you up with some people in our department that could actually do you justice. So I didn't necessarily like the fight scenes. And also some people had issue with the CGI in Wakanda. Another thing, I did too. But I have a problem with CGI in all Marvel movies, minus the Winter Soldier. Like, minus the Winter Soldier, that whole Marvel universe looks too fake and too colorful at times. And I was just about to include Age of Ultron, but nah, the CGI was tripping on that too. But so I don't like how the other movies look either. Like, I've always felt that they've pictures... Because typically when you're trying to hide bad CGI, you fight in darkness. And that's the reason why that whole night scene took place at the end of Batman v Superman. And that's the reason why they made Black Panther's night scene when he's in the suit, it's usually at night. And even when he fights in the daytime, he found a way to go underground in the darkness. They're like, let's hide some of these bad graphics. So So once again, the CGI had a problem, but I have a problem with CGI in all Marvel movies. Minus Winter Soldier and probably the first Iron Man, I want to say, because it just that stuff looked so real or good. It just looked great. But other than that, I mean, those were my only two problems. So let me hear you hate on this movie so they could go ahead and retweet your reviews like they've been doing to them Brian people. I'm blocking that part out, by the way.
What you call it? I had the same issues as you. Once again, the CGI really bothered me. And it's not just for me with the MCU. It's just with movies in general. I think a lot of studios, they're hiring too heavily on CGI. Like, they're getting lazy. Like, they don't realize how practical effects, how effective they really are, how they really put you in the movie instead of take you out of the movie. I know CGI can be cheaper. It's less time-consuming at times.
It's not even that. Like, I think CGI is the future. It's just the problem with you only have a couple of studios that could that want to pay that price tag to hire the right personnel, because typically people do their CGI out, like they do it out of house. Like when they needed that mustache removed, it wasn't Warner Brothers that did it. They hired a company that specializes in that stuff.
Still suck.
But nowadays, I know, but they didn't have enough time. That's why then people are like, hey, this is the directions they gave us. This is the time they gave us. And we told them we needed X amount of time. They gave us half of that. But when you look at the end of this movies, all I see is Adobe Premiere, Adobe After Effects. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is the software I use. So there hasn't really been any breakthroughs in CGI since like the late 90s.
Yeah.
And it's typically in the past, when you look at I want to do a series on this too, like to show like where we are today and where it came from. The biggest, like you've seen progression in Hollywood minus studios, because there's only like 6 major studios and that number isn't going to change. And special effects. Like I felt like the last major breakthrough was like the late 90s. After that, we've moved backwards because people just don't want to pay the price tag. So, and I think if you spend the money to actually perfect special effects, like allow those resources to be cheaper. So spend money on the technology to find new, to progress, like move the technology forward. You'll spend money now, but it'll save you money in the long run. They don't want to do that. So that's the reason why go ahead.
That's one thing I respect James Cameron. Like he knew his limitations back then and he always respected as far as technology. He understood the importance of, tech and getting that advanced. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, like studios really have to, like you said,
that's the thing that studios don't want to do, because how long have you been? I haven't been waiting for this movie because I didn't like it, but how long have people been waiting for Avatar 2?
Years. It's been a while.
Exactly. So that's the sacrifice. It's like, all right, in order to push the art forward, I have to put the art on ice. And a lot of studios don't want to do that. Like, these are publicly traded companies. And as much as you think Disney's making money out the butt, like, they're making $1 billion every time it bat. However, when you look at their projections with Wall Street, they're barely beating the street.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh wow, like with all the billions that they're making, they're barely meeting projections on Wall Street. So it's like, yeah, like you can't afford time to breathe and to actually perfect your craft. It's just like, and that's the penalty whenever you're dealing with the publicly traded company. But without further ado, you wanted to get to this, so do I. Let's talk about the low-key best part of this movie.
Yep.
Can we talk about the villain real quick?
Yes, we can.
So, all right. So this guy's story starts off in Oakland, California during 1992. If you've watched Civil War, some people will be foolish enough to make the correlation to, hey, that's the same time Tony's father died. But no. It's in California, and I grew up as a Different World fan. So as a kid, at a young age, I was always familiar with the 1992 LA riots. And basically that plays a significant role in this movie. So I agreed with this father during the first conversation.
Yeah.
And I think Disney, they read comment sections, and I think they're sick and tired of people picking at their villains. I think Disney knows how to make a great villain, or should I say bad villain, bad in a good way. They don't have the time. It's like, if you're making $1 billion every time, and then if you put a good villain in the movie and you only make $1 billion and 2 cents, there's no incentive to make great villains or great stories for that matter. So I think Michael B. Jordan is the director's muse. Mm-hmm. You know, they've been in 3 films, and they've got a 4th one coming out.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're gonna have a 15 more because they're both young, so it's a wrap. It's
Scorsese and Leo, or if you want to say Scorsese and what's your De Niro? De Niro. There we go.
It's like, so that's what it is now. It's like they found each other, so it's a wrap.
Exactly. It's like everything that he's gonna put him in every movie that he has. It's like Samuel L. Jackson and Quentin Tarantino. Yep. So I think they're homeboys, and he was on some, hey, look, man, I know you dealing with Fantastic Four, and that's not going the way you want. I just got a job from Disney. I want to bring you in, but it's the bad guy, but I'm gonna make you look good. I'm really gonna help out your story arc, because you could tell the director put a lot of effort into making the villain make sense. So it's a little kid that grew up in the ghetto. He saw the 1992 LA riots. Mm-hmm. He hears about his father's home country and realizes they've done nothing to intervene.
Yep.
When they have the resources that could heal the world from a medicine standpoint, and they have the weapons that could, help the world from a tactical standpoint. So there's some resentment there. And I agreed with them, up until the point where he sat on that throne. That's when he started tripping on some Joffrey stuff. But so I love them, and I know you had a couple of points that you wanted to bring up. I mean, is there anything that I missed?
Nah, it's like you said, like when his father made that speech, they're heavily incarcerated, over policed, communities flooded with drugs, and it's just like, you're just listening to his speech, you're like, yeah, like he's right. You know what I'm saying? Like,
this ain't. Bro, did you hear T'Challa? These ain't my people. I'm the king of these people. I was like, bro, you tripping right now, man. Like, you kind of tripping, dude. You kind of tripping. Yeah. And so I agree with him for most of the movie. And like I said, after he beat down T'Challa during that first match and got power, he went a little too far. That's when I think Disney stepped in, and they were like, they rolled up their sleeve, and I was like, hey, great script. However, we need to make this guy a bad guy, you guys. So some of that stuff didn't make sense, because when he was originally talking, I'm like, all right, I get you. But then soon as he stepped into leadership, his leadership intangibles were really suspect.
Yeah.
He went from saying he wanted to empower the disenfranchised to trying to start a world war. Yeah. And I was like, bro, just chill out. And then you're not even like, one thing is, because I know there's now I'm being nitpicky, but it's his first couple hours in power. The only thing he does is change his outfit, and then he starts sending out military weapons. Like, he didn't address his people. A lot of people don't even know that the King of Wakanda is like changed power, and he didn't even meet his war dogs. Like, he's just like, hey, you know, they'll fall in line soon. He just starts sending weapons in less than 24 hours after sitting on the throne. And I was like, man, I would like for people to have left the movie and agreed with him 100%, or agreed with Black Panther 100%. I wanted that Martin versus Malcolm type thing, to where it's like, hey, both of these guys aren't necessarily wrong. You could agree with anyone, but then he started tripping when he got, you know, the throne. So, you know what they could have done, because one of my bold predictions, and I told you this, Hulk, and I said it on a previous podcast, I kept saying, I don't think Claw is the bad guy. And the reason I said that is, if you look at Claw's scenes in the trailer, you could only count 2 scenes. I see the car chase and I see an interrogation scene. I would, that's like, there's 24 scenes in the movie sometimes. So, you know, like, but with Michael B. Jordan, I'm counting like 8 different scenes. So he's at best in 30% of the movie. Mm-hmm. You know, so now it's like, I don't think they're gonna kill him, because the fact that I knew him and Ryan had a relationship, I don't think you bring on a homeboy to kill him. So I'm like, I think they're gonna set him up like a Loki, like he's not necessarily a bad guy and he's gonna get to live. I was completely wrong, and rather than copping out like Disney usually does and afraid to kill characters, this was on some gangster movie type stuff. Like, he went out, and I think they sold more toys that way, because I think he's a lot of people's favorite character. Like, I'm reading people's timeline and they liked him more than Black Panther. They say he's the second best villain in MCU history next to Loki.
To me, he's first. To me, he's kind of first. But
I got him at first too, but I understand why people like Loki more. So, like I said, for me, he's my favorite. But I'm like, wow, to be in top 2, there's only 2 villains that work probably. Well, you got, wow, you know, people aren't really considering Winter Soldier. So that was a villain too. So I don't know if they were putting him in that mix, but I'm putting him over Winter Soldier and I'm putting him over Loki. But I don't think you have I don't think you have a beef or quarrel with any of those 3 options. And I think his death, number one, he had the coldest line in the movie: bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from the ships, because they knew death was better than bondage. And I've always felt that way from a biblical standpoint. I'm just like, when you research what bondage means, I'm like, man, I'll go ahead and take this 10 seconds of pain rather than this lifetime of hurt. So I thought that was the coldest line in the movie. And for me, I was surprised Disney even greenlit this script, because Disney doesn't typically do things this risky. And there's a lot of risky lines.
Cursing too. I was surprised.
The cursing, I'm not upset about. I'm not upset about this either.
I'm surprised that they allowed some of it in.
The cursing, I think they're starting to become laxed with that, because it's PG-13. However, it's the content. You know, usually when Disney wants to do content like this, they put it on Touchstone. But with this, there's a lot of correlations with America and how they play in society. And if you got a couple notes, feel free to share. There's obviously some correlations with our political climate today. Did you notice?
Oh yeah, for sure. The first thing I thought about was the refugee aspect. I don't know if you remember that part where he's talking to I forgot his character's name, but Daniel Kuya, where they're talking about the refugees, how if you let them in, you're letting them in with your problems. And it was just like, it reminded me of some of the stuff we're going through with Syria, and how, you know, we don't know what to do with that situation. Like, should we let the refugees in? As far as, you know, immigration policies as well, like, you know, having a wall, you know, being, you know, we have all these resources here in America, you know, funding, you know, money, all that stuff. Do we necessarily want to go out there and outsource it to the world and like try to help out the world, or should we just you know, be closed, have a build a wall, be closed off, you know, to the rest of the world and things like that?
It sounds like Wakanda is America.
Yeah, and which I thought was pretty interesting, like just like how they have all these resources, and then they're conflicted on whether they should try to help the world and and fight their problems as well. So.
And I love that. When it comes to Malcolm versus Martin, I was more of the fan of the Martin camp. I just think history played out horribly wrong in that case, because typically when you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate, but I understood what happened to Malcolm. But with Martin, I just never understood it. I'm like, wow, usually a person that projects peace receives peace. And, the way he went out, I was like, that just didn't make sense to me. So, I bring up Martin because I'm from his school of camp where it's all about loving your enemy sometimes.
Yeah.
And in order to get people to see from your point of view, you have to get them to willingly step into your your shoes.
Yeah.
So it's tough to do that when you're kind of like villainizing the enemy. And this movie, rather than make America the enemy, they basically took the problems that some of the attributes of America that some people consider to be a problem, and they gave that to Wakanda. So it's an easier way to get the viewer to be a willing avatar to walk in the footsteps of the disenfranchised. So they use Wakanda as a scapegoat because of the different forms of racism that happen over a long period of time. Like in the intro, it shows basically, the slave trade. The first flashback takes place during 1992. That's a huge moment for police brutality. When you look at what happened in LA, which caused the riots because of the Rodney King verdict. So, and that's still going on today. So rather than I like the fact that they didn't bring up police brutality today. They just went to the origin, like, hey man, this has been going on since 1992. So it helps people understand, like, hey, some of the stuff that people are posting on Twitter and it's a cry for help, it's valid. And but instead of saying America's the issue, they made Wakanda the issue. And I thought that was just brilliant. I don't know whose idea that was to put it in the script. I know this film is written by Ryan, but I think it's safe to assume that his first draft wasn't the one that was actually accepted. It's never your first draft that makes it. And I think it's easy to believe that America was probably the villain at first, and I think they changed a couple of things to make the to be a little bit more tactful. So, and keep in mind, and even as a king, T'Challa, he turns his back on all of those kings that he sees in that that spirit world, and to me, that just symbolizes sometimes it's okay to disagree with the powers that be.
Yeah, because he understood his cousin's point of view. Like, nah, y'all the ones that was tripping. You know what I'm saying? Y'all created him.
Yeah,
and which was so cool because it tied back to like the MCU, where the MCU is always creating their own villains. You know what I'm saying? They created Loki, they created Winter Soldier, Iron Man created every villain he ever encountered. So it was like, I really thought that was cool that the MCU brought that back again and stayed consistent with it. So like you said, like I thought it was perfect, like him just turning back on the Kings. Like, nah, bruh, y'all the ones that was tripping. Y'all made this kid, so violent, so angry. So I gotta come and try to fix this.
Hey, T. So that's
yeah, I was dying when you said that.
And I thought that was brilliant too. And then just a couple of correlations that I want to bring up. You brought up you brought up I forgot his real name, Chris from Get Out. His quote about refugees.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
And then you also have the nation at the end when he's addressing the nation and he's basically opening up his resources to the world. Remember, from America's standpoint, Wakanda is a nation of famine.
Yeah, they're a third world country, like with nothing basically.
Yeah, and to be honest, sometimes that's how we look at it, growing up in America because of propaganda and stuff like that. That's how we look at Africa, and when it's not till the internet became more of a bigger part of traveling, because back in the day you used to have to use travel agents, but now it's like when you want to go somewhere, you just do your little Google search on places to go, and everybody has a tourist site, and when you're looking outside of the resorts, I'm like, wow, this country's actually pretty cool. And when you watch documentaries and they'll go to a country where you assume is just horrible. And remember, my wife's from Jamaica. It's another thing. It's like the way people talk about Jamaica sometimes when it's like it's such a huge tourist attraction. I'm like, sometimes it's not all bad in these countries, but nonetheless, I digress. Yeah, so the one guy at the press conference says, "But what are we supposed to gain from a nation of famine?" And that just kind of reminds me of our nation's chief when he made a quote this year, and I'm paraphrasing. It was last year about how why don't the good immigrants come into our country? We only get the bad ones, something like that. And I'm like, nah, you never know who could add value. Because
Exactly.
And then another thing was, wise men build bridges, not walls. Foolish men build walls, or barriers, something like that, to that tune. And that's just build a wall, a hashtag. And I'm like, wow, he snuck that in there, because I don't even know if Disney recognized what he was saying. So I just thought that this film is going to have a huge impact outside of what happened on screen. It's about the message that it relayed outside of the screen. So that's going to help with this ranking. So let's rank this baby on where does it rank with the other Marvel movies. And keep in mind, we've done a list like this before. I'm not going to go through it too much because the bottom half of my list tends to stay the same year after year. So what I want to do is I want to tell you where Black Panther falls, and I want to tell you why I'm putting other movies ahead of it. So my list minus Black Panther, and Hulk, you could I know our list was similar until it got closer to the top last time, but last time without, this isn't including Black Panther. So Avengers, the God, basically, Iron Man, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, you have Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor Ragnarok, Doctor Strange, Civil War, Age of Ultron, Thor, Captain America, the First Avenger, Spider-Man Homecoming, Ant-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, Iron Man 2, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World. The bottom changed a little bit because now I'm starting to respect Captain America, the First Avenger more now. And I'm also starting to
good.
Yeah, good. I'm starting to disrespect Spider-Man Homecoming also. So that kind of fell. But overall, any glaring differences between my list and yours?
Like you said, like I always had the First Avenger higher than yours, and but I think like our top, but like you said, our top three is the same almost.
You got Iron Man in your top three?
Yeah.
All right. So what's your top three then?
My top three is the First Avengers, Winter Soldier, and then Iron Man.
All right, and then all right. So now for the big reveal, I got Black Panther at number 4.
Wow.
Where do you have Black Panther?
That's the thing. Like, it was a struggle for me. Like, I went back and forth up until the time we recorded this. But it's just like, I had to put it ahead of Iron Man and put it number 3.
Good. You still got it in your top 4. I'm not mad at that. Yeah. So let me tell you the reason why I didn't do that. I went back and forth. When I first saw this movie, I'm like, oh, easy. It's number 4. Easy. And then I was going to record that day and put it at number 4, which I ended up doing anyway. And then as time went by and I'm like, I just kept thinking more about the movie. I'm like, no, the fact that I'm still thinking about this, Iron Man never made me feel this way, because Iron Man did so much for the comic book universe, where I think Black Panther's doing so much outside. Like, I think this is going to change the way diversity. All right, I'm in the middle of this, but I might actually put Black Panther over Captain America, the Winter Soldier. I'm going to tell you why. So I got it at number 3 now. I just changed my mind. Just because I'm talking right now. And let me tell you why. Let me tell you why I'm putting Winter Soldier, I'm moving it down, and I'm moving Black Panther up. But let me start from the top and tell you why certain movies are more important. So my list is based off of importance, relevance, and also the entertainment value for a comic book movie fan and also a casual fan. If someone's never seen an MCU movie, typically out of this list, you introduce them to Avengers, Iron Man, Guardians of the Galaxy. Anything outside of that, you run the risk of alienating your potential recruit. My wife's not really into comic book movies, but she got into comic book movies when I introduced her to Iron Man. This is after like Thor and First Avenger came out. This was getting her ready for Avengers. And that still works to this day. I introduced a casual fan to Winter Soldier. And I came to the realization that comic book movie fans love Winter Soldier. However, casual fans, not so much. The action's great, but it doesn't keep them glued. Like they're not anxious to see the other movies. I think with Iron Man and the after credit scene, and when you explain to them what happens, I'm like, no, they had different movies and then they all came together 4 years later. They were like, oh, let me see how it plays out. I'm like, first you have to watch this. You just watched it. Now go watch Thor. Hey, go watch Captain America, the First Avenger. Like they're all going to get into one movie and then you introduce them to Avengers and then they're glued all the way through. You try to do that with the Winter Soldier, it doesn't work that way. It's a one-off and they don't necessarily come back. So it's hard to retain fans with that movie. So Avengers, it did so much for the comic book movie genre as a whole. The money that it produced, the first to really cross 200 million. Now everybody could do it. I think that movie made people like blockbusters more. That's the reason why you're seeing these other movies continue to break that record. And the after credit scene, just the merging of the universe, they made Fox, Sony, and Warner Brothers change their slate completely.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure if Avengers never came out, there would have been a continuation of the Christopher Nolan universe. Yeah. But the reason that they rebooted it is because we've excluded all these other characters that we own. We got to start over because Superman can't be in this universe. If you remember, I'm pretty sure that tease that we saw at the end when they were teasing Joseph Gordon-Levitt as the new Batman, that would have came to fruition. But Avengers changed that, and it changed the way Sony went to business. With Spider-Man, it changed the way Fox went to business. With X-Men, it changed the way everyone went to business. Iron Man, although I particularly don't necessarily, I don't sit through Iron Man nowadays. I've just seen it too many times. So for me, it doesn't hold up. But it does. But I'm just saying that's not a movie that I want to sit through. There's some parts that I feel like I don't want to go through the scene. Can we fast forward to the good stuff? But that basically redefined the origin story. Those plot points that happen in that movie, you know, having a dark hero, but he comes to an aha moment and he wants to change the world. That vigilante approach. Everybody used to follow the Batman structure at first. It's like a dead parent at a young age. And then you all of a sudden, because of something within you, you want to do good. But no, this showed the flaw in heroes. Also, it popularized hiring Oscar, worthy candidates as superheroes. Not everybody that does these movies have been recognized, from an Oscar or Academy performance or something like that. Although I know they did the whole Christopher Nolan thing with, their Batman, and he was already a prestigious actor. I think this movie popularized it. And also when you have your sarcastic hero tossing jokes, that's what you used to put sidekicks in the movie for. The reason they give those one-liners to heroes now is because of Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal. So it was so influential to comic book movie genre, not as much as Avengers, but just as much. Captain America Winter Soldier, I think, is the best action we've ever seen in a comic book movie, and some of the best action we've ever seen in a movie in general. And I also think it's the future of comic book movies to where you're starting to see them mesh comic book themes with other genres like political spy thriller. Okay, Ant-Man's going to be a heist as well as a comic book movie. That's the first time I remember it being done. And I think that's extremely important. And I think that's how comic book movies are going to survive for the next decade when you start merging it with different genres. However, the only reason I'm putting Black Panther ahead of it is because same thing, the impact off the screen, it introduced me to characters I didn't know, which I think were difficult because you have a cast full of no names, right? And you also tie in so much of the realistic political climate today. And I'm like, so from a box office standpoint, it delivered. And also from a villain standpoint, it delivered. No name actors, it introduced me to like the future of Hollywood. And also it made more fans because a lot of people that saw this movie, they've never watched the MCU film. And some people in my circle have already, kind of confessed to that. Like, what is an MCU? What is that? Like some kind of virus? Is that something on the periodic table of elements? They've made these.
Yeah, people.
Go ahead.
Yeah, now I added a good percentage to Infinity War. Like people are gonna watch this just because of Black Panther. Like I know that for a fact.
So I got it at number 3, and I'm putting down Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Yeah, me, I'm like kind of reverse. I guess like it's in my top 3, but I think I'm putting down Iron Man. I still have Avengers at the top, Winter Soldier at number 2, and like you said, with Black Panther, I had to put it number 3 just because of the culture. Because now it's like, where do you visit? Do you visit Zamunda or do you visit Wakanda? You know what I'm saying? Like it has.
It's a tough question.
Like
but
it has that.
Me personally, I never remember Hakeem getting whooped like 3 or 4 times in the movie. If you remember how he handled Samuel L. Jackson in that robbery scene, like, is this your king? Really? Like the dude got whooped a couple times. When you take that Black Panther drink out of his mouth, he kind of just a regular dude. But
that was the worst.
Yeah, go ahead though.
Like superhero beatdown since like Bane, like when he destroyed Batman. Like,
don't forget Captain America. But Captain America through the fight.
Yeah, he wanted Bucky to win. He wanted Bucky to win. Yeah,
yeah.
So I don't count that one.
Nah, this dude was getting.
He got whooped.
He had basically Forrest Whitaker had to jump in. I'm like, you're messing up his honor even more.
Exactly. Yeah, bruh, what are you doing?
One thing I don't like is when you get whooped. If you get whooped, just go sit down somewhere, and you just want to fight. You want to go take your Senzu bean, go get your magic powers back, and then you want to go beg for a rematch. That's why, I don't like when people do that. Like you begging the guy who won for a rematch.
I didn't yield. That's what you were saying.
I didn't yield, bro. Hey, fight. So he said, hey man, I don't got time for this, bro. The fight over, dude. You got whooped. Hey man, let's go. Let's get back to work.
He was in a coma, bro.
He said, no, I didn't die. I cheated. And they gave me some medicine, which was supposed to be that's supposed to disqualify him.
Exactly.
And I'm like, bruh, just take this L and just move your butt out of Wakanda, bruh. Just go somewhere.
Nah, that's true. He was not supposed to come back. Like he lost, bro. He took that L.
And once again, when I watch this movie, I'm gonna watch this movie a couple more times. I'm probably gonna go see it today. It's Monday. I'm probably gonna go see it today. The kids are out of school.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely buying the Blu-ray. Just to kind of hear more from the director. However, the more I watch it, there's going to be scenes in the middle that I don't want to sit through, just like the Iron Man thing. And that's why I urge everyone out there who's a movie buff, but has people in their circle who don't like these type of movies. Introduce them to those movies that you have in your top 3. And that's what I mean. Because although when you talk to people are surprised I have Iron Man so high. But I'm like, no, it's a better movie. If I never seen any of these movies and I watch all of them for the first time, Iron Man's probably going to sit higher than some of these other films. It's not about it's a little bit about it. A little bit of it is about rewatchability. However, a majority of it is about that first instinct on how you feel. That's why we're doing this ranking list now and not 10 times, after I see the movie 10 times down the line.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so it's in both of our top 3, apparently. I'm anxious to hear what you guys think. Let us know in the comment section. Where do you have this movie ranked? Let us know if you hate it. Let us know if you love it. And I'm anxious to hear what you guys think. So, guys, it's about that time. Thanks for joining us today. Before you leave, if you like what you heard, share it with a friend on Apple Podcasts or wherever you go for your podcast. Don't let this be the last time we hear from you or you hear from us. Support the show and become a sponsor by visiting our Patreon at www.patreon.com/CouchTomatoFilms. Also join us next week and check the show notes on where to find us weekly. It's Couch Tomato Films on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and Couch Tomato Film on Twitter. Other than that, peace.